We're here to talk about trust, about shaping our digital future at a time when things are frankly pretty fractured out there. This conference will mostly have been dominated at times by these discussions. So let's have a crack at this. Let's start with you as Group CEO. I want to understand how EAND is positioning itself to shape our digital future before we move on.
Look, we are a technology leader in the region. We are a pioneer in telecoms. The company this year celebrates 50 years of operation, which puts us among, let's say, the top tier of old businesses that have been there, but has been reinventing itself. In the region, we were the first to launch 3G technology, 4G technology, 5G technology, and we're working also to develop the new technology. So we're working with multiple groups to develop the standards for 6G. It is a big challenge, and we are sitting, let's say, in the zone between the East and the West, and there is a different pool in terms of technology, and we're trying to balance things out. So we have this kind of responsibility as well to try to help steer into common standards.
You brought up 6G. EAND has outlined a comprehensive 6G framework at this point. So what's the timeline on that? And what do you expect the impact of 6G rollout to be, Hatem?
I think we expect standards for 6G to kind of be almost finalized in the next 2 years, so by 2028. And after that standards are set, we see some testing, expecting to see actual 6G networks that are available. The earliest will be 2030. And at that point, gradually rolled out. Let's also remember that we have just recently introduced a 5G Advanced, so for people living here, we call it 5.5G. And that brings already today a lot of the benefits that we'll see with 6G. So we're seeing with that network, ultra low latency, super fast speeds, and these are some of the benefits that we'll get of 6G. Of course, 6G will also use other spectrum bands, will probably integrate more with direct-to-device with satellites and so on. So these are things that are being worked out in the standards at the moment. But I would expect that you probably will not have in your hand a phone that shows 6G before 2030.
Geopolitical tensions and national interests are frankly conflicting with what is a vision, at least, for a truly inclusive and trusted digital future. I just want to get your sense on how EAND navigates scaling your business, fostering greater international cooperation, which is frankly good for business, and cross-border collaboration at a time where we're seeing less cooperation, not more, in this digital realm. And who really holds the leverage today?
So let me start with the third question, then work my way backwards. So from an international perspective, we have been very active in laying the foundation for a more digital world and the world of AI. So we've been connecting the world through our fiber cables that are running east and west, and we continue to work very actively on this because this is one of the foundations of a digital world. You have to connect the world on, let's say, the mass level first before you get into the overlay technology. So we are working very hard on this, and to do this properly, we have expanded, we have opened offices for that connectivity in London, in Miami, in South Africa, in Singapore, to make sure that we bring all this network together. Today, we are definitely in the top 10 in the world in terms of our international cable network, if not in the top 5. And that's very, very important as a foundation. And then you have the possibility being here that we are able to get exposure to see technology from both sides. So we have great partnerships with AWS, with Microsoft, with Qualcomm. At the same time, we also have exposure to the Chinese technology. We know what Huawei are capable of and what's the roadmap. So by seeing that, we see that there is still a world where we can have a a common standard across the world. Again, for many of the people here, if you remember 20 years ago, or let's say 25 years ago, if you travel between the region and the US, when you landed there, you needed to rent a phone because your phone would not work anymore. You needed to have a US number because there was no roaming. Same thing if you went to Japan, because Japan had a different standard. We started to see the world come together with 3G and then fully come together with 4G and 5G. Now, the challenge is to remain together. Remember, again, how some of the standards that diverged, like some countries have 110 volts, 220 volts. Some countries have round plugs, some countries have square plugs. All these things, or driving on the right or driving on the left, I mean, all these things bring complexity, bring hurdles to the supply chain, and present the mass production of technology that is essential for inclusion. Because if we want to have the whole world, everyone in the global south connected, we need to have the affordability factor, and that only is achieved by having ubiquitous, worldwide global standards, and that's something that we really need to push.
And I want to talk about the Global Digital Compact, which was written back in 2024. It was about, cooperation. That was written, what, less than 24 months ago. We are in such a different place now. But before we do that, because I just, there's this sense that we live in a world of that lacks now and may further lack cooperation going forward. Before we do that, I really want to get to the bottom of the following. Who's got the leverage today? I mean, you sit there as Group CEO of EAND. Is it the infrastructure owners? Is it the platforms? Is it the policymakers? Is it you and I as users? Who's got the leverage?
Actually, all of the above. It's really a multi-stakeholder environment now, because we have sovereign governments that dictate how some of the data and some of the infrastructure works in their governments or within their sovereign countries. We have then the platforms. We have the, the OpenAIs, Grok, Gemini, and others, many, many others, and of course the other side, DeepSeek and other Chinese technologies that are there, and they're not available everywhere. And some of them are open source, some of them are constrained, so a lot of give and take there. There's the international standards bodies, so like the ITU, for example, GSMA, which is the mobile alliance of all the mobile companies, is also working on some parts of the standards, and different other bodies that are trying to work on the standards. And then at the end, it's you as a user. What do you decide to use? Because you can be in the US and you decide that you're using DeepSeek. Today you can do that. You can download the app and you can use it. And the other way around, somebody in China can be using ChatGPT. So there is that constant flux. And this is similar to many other technologies and things. But I think the fracture and the pressure today of if you use this technology, you cannot use the other, you have to separate them completely, is something that never happened before.
The Global Digital Compact was designed to align innovation, governance, and in a typical sort of UN way, human values. In 2026, as we discussed earlier, global cooperation does feel like somewhat of a pipe dream. And we live in a world in 2026 where China is certainly more vocally willing to follow a sort of multilateral path, more so than the United States. And in the big fight between the two at present, who's going to win out, and how will that affect our digital future?
Actually, it's even more complicated than that, because today, Europe is trying to find its own way as well. Because Europe, having been caught now in the middle, they don't have platforms at scale. They don't have the data center capability that the both other sides have. So now Europe is focusing a lot on building sovereign capability, sovereign data centers to run AI applications within Europe. So at the moment, we see a lot of that. I mean, we were lucky here in the region that already, I would say a couple of years ago, we have kind of ironed out how this works. What needs to be sovereign in terms of data, what needs to be here on the ground in terms of regulated and sensitive industries, but what can be in the open cloud, what can be in the public cloud, and so on. But in many other countries and many other jurisdictions, that hasn't been defined yet. So in the coming period, I think that everyone will try to see how they can either utilize the global platforms in a sovereign manner, or they end up trying to push to develop their own platforms. And of course, things are changing every day. I think in the last couple of days, we're now hearing about data centers in space. So from space perspective, you wonder what sovereign that will be in.
What do you make of data centers in space, just out of interest?
Look, I think a lot of things that we thought were science fiction ended up being reality. So I've been very hard to judge. The physics works, I mean, in terms of the frictionless, very cold space. It does help with some of the process of data centers, but again, putting anything into space is very expensive. So I think it will come to the economies at some point.
I've got just a couple of minutes left, so I want to leave that time just to get a sense from you. We talked about the 6G framework, gave us a bit of a timeline about rollout and the impact that 6G might have going forward. Just do some crystal ball gazing for us. 2026 today, where will your business and the kind of wider digital space be in 31 and in 36, 10 years from now?
I think what we're seeing now is a lot of telecom companies by DNA and started by us, but many others are doing it, are evolving into a bigger ecosystem. We see, for example, inclusion, which was one of the things in the Global Digital Compact, is happening not only through connecting people, but connecting them and providing them financial services. So banking for the unbanked. Whether we do this in the GCC for blue collar, so a lot of people that have salaries that are too low that the banks are not interested now have payment wallets that they are able to do a lot of transactions on them, even having microloans when they need, having small credit cards and so on, happening today, but we'll see a lot of it in 2031, and we see that already happening overall in the global south. So we see that in Africa, we see that in Asia, and this is something that technology is really changing. I think that the impact of AI will be much, much bigger in the knowledge economies than it is in, let's say, the emerging and global south, because, again, the percentage of knowledge jobs in these areas are much lower. In the knowledge economies, you have much, much bigger base of knowledge workers, and I think AI will have an impact that over the years. Of course, there's also a lot of positivity and, let's say, prosperity that will come with AI, but we will need to manage this going forward, how we will manage the rise of AI and keeping jobs in knowledge economies during that transition.
And there will be a lot of people in this audience, young Emiratis and others, who are perhaps a similar age to, for example, your daughter, who I know will be spending some time with me in the summer at CNN. And they will wonder what opportunities you believe they might have, or what advice you might have for them as they seek opportunities, to your point, your last point, in this digital future. Just last line.
I think the same way that the current generation, our digital natives, are able to use the mobile and the computer normally, they need to learn how to use AI properly. I was with a friend working in the financial industry a few days ago, and he was saying that to develop a new model, credit scoring model, used to take weeks with 20, 25 coders working on it. Today, with a very bright guy that knows how to use AI, he was able to develop that work alone over the weekend, just using AI tools. So if you can use these tools to their full capacity, you will succeed, you will prosper. If you fall behind, especially if your expertise is in an area that is repetitive, that can be replaced by AI, it's time to start looking for what you want to do next.
And with that, we're going to leave it there. We've timed out. Hatem, thank you very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Becky, always.